Amphibians first appeared on Earth over 300 million years ago.
The death of Lonesome today not only signifies the end of a species of Galapagos land tortoise.
Every photograph tells a story. Some stories are joyous, some are heartbreaking.
Known as the Bali tiger, it was the smallest tiger subspecies.
But what we would be looking at today aren't just pictures. They are echoes of a world that no longer exists. Pictures that captured the final chapters of incredible creatures. Let's dive in. Number 1. Thylacine. The thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger or Tasmanian wolf, was one of the most fascinating animals in Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea. Sadly, it went extinct on the mainland and New Guinea about 3,600 years ago, likely because dingoes, a type of wild dog, were introduced around that time.
A dingo becomes most lethal when it teams up with others. As they get older, the pups learn to work in tandem.
But since dingoes never made it to Tasmania, around 5,000 of thylacines survived there until European settlers arrived. But there, farmers started seeing them as a threat to their livestock, and rewards were offered for killing thylacines. The last known thylacine, it died in a zoo in Tasmania back in 1936. Now, why was it called the Tasmanian tiger? That's because of the stripes on its back, but it was also called the Tasmanian wolf because it looked like a wild dog. And here's a cool fact. Scientists are still studying thylacine, and some are even trying to bring it back through cloning. So, who knows? Maybe one day we'll see the Tasmanian tiger again. Number 2. The passenger pigeon. Once upon a time, there were billions of them. Today, not a single one left. How did we lose the passenger pigeon forever? The male passenger pigeons were a bit bigger than the females and had gray feathers with a bronze shine, while the females were duller in color. These birds weren't just common, they were fast, flying at speeds up to 100 km/h.
Literally alone for about 4 years before she died, and we knew at that time that there were no other ones in the wild. So this is one of the rare cases when you can actually place an exact time and date on an extinction.
Passenger pigeons were hunted by Native Americans, but things really took a turn when Europeans arrived, and you can guess what happened afterwards. By the 1800s, their hunting became common because their meat was cheap and easy to sell. Their numbers started to fall in the early 1800s, and by 1900, the last wild passenger pigeon was shot in Ohio. The very last pigeon, named Martha, passed away in 1914 at the Cincinnati Zoo. This story is proof that even the most common things can slip away if we're not careful. Number 3, the quagga. The quagga, a zebra unlike any other. But what made this animal so special? For years, people thought the quagga was its own species, but it turns out it was a subspecies of the plain zebra. It was around 8 feet long and stood about 4 to 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder. But the quagga had a really unique look.
The quagga was named for its shrill barking sound, and it was about half the weight and height of other zebras.
Its front half had the typical brown and white zebra stripes, but the back half completely brown, no stripes at all, making it look more like a horse than a zebra. After European settlers arrived, everything changed. The quagga was heavily hunted. Some were even taken to zoos in Europe, but breeding programs didn't work. By 1878, the last wild quagga was gone, and the very last one died in 1883 in Amsterdam. So, the quagga went from being a unique zebra to a memory in just a few decades. Pretty wild, right? Number 4, Western black rhinoceros. Meet the Western black rhinoceros, also known as the West African black rhino, a once magnificent creature that roamed the grasslands of sub-Saharan Africa. But the sad part is that this unique rhino is now extinct. By around 2006, the last of these rhinos had disappeared, and despite extensive searches, no more were found. What made the Western black rhino stand out was its genetic differences from other black rhinos. It primarily lived in Cameroon, but due to illegal hunting, they decreased in numbers. By 2011, the International Union for Conservation of Nature made the official call. It was officially declared extinct. Well, it's sad that we will never get to see a western black rhino. Number 5. Pinta Island Tortoise, Lonesome George, the last known Pinta Island tortoise and one of the rarest creatures ever to walk the earth. He called the Galapagos Islands home, but his story is a bittersweet reminder of how fragile life can be. It was discovered in 1971 by a Hungarian scientist. George's home, Pinta Island, was a shell of its former self, attacked by hungry goats. To save him, they moved George to a research station. Can you imagine being the last of your entire species? That was George's reality. Scientists went on a mission to find him a mate, offering rewards and trying every trick in the book, but sadly, none of it worked.
Researchers tried to preserve George's genes by getting him to mate with females of other subspecies. However, the eggs laid by the females were unviable.
On a heartbreaking day in 2012, George passed away, and just like that, an entire species is lost to history. Number 6. Pyrenean ibex. Once a common sight, these incredible creatures were part of a larger family of Iberian wild goats, but the last one died in January 2000, officially making the species extinct. This wild goat was commonly found in the Cantabrian Mountains, southern France, and northern Pyrenees, but it got really wild in 2003 when scientists tried something daring. They attempted to bring the Pyrenean ibex back to life through cloning. And did it work? It actually worked, kind of. They managed to create a living clone, but unfortunately, the baby ibex died just minutes after being born due to lung issues. Still, this made the Pyrenean ibex the first animal ever brought back from extinction, only to go extinct again right away. Who knew being extinct twice was even possible? Number 7. Caribbean monk seal. The Caribbean monk seal. They were like the cool kids of the seal world, chilling in the warm tropical waters. But humans totally messed things up. We hunted them for their oil and meat, and we overfished their food supply. It was like stealing their lunch and then beating them up. The last confirmed sighting of a Caribbean monk seal, way back in 1952, near Serenilla Bank, just west of Jamaica and Nicaragua. And by 2008, it was official. They were gone. Crazy thing is, these seals were related to the Hawaiian monk seal and the Mediterranean monk seal. Think of them as the lost siblings. Let's just hope we don't let their siblings meet the same fate. Time to put in efforts to protect them. Number 8. Yangtze River dolphin. Baiji. The Baiji or Yangtze River dolphin was a living legend in China's waters. When the river was once a peaceful home, it became a busy highway for boats and factories. The Baiji's world was turned upside down. In 2006, after searching high and low, scientists had to admit the Baiji was basically gone. It was a massive loss for China and the world. But wait, in 2007, someone claimed to see a Baiji. It was like a ray of hope in a dark tunnel. But was it really a Baiji? No one's sure. The last confirmed Baiji, sadly, passed away in 2002. So, is there still hope to find this mysterious dolphin again? One can only wonder. Number 9. Golden toad. The golden toad, also known as the Monteverde toad, Alajuela toad, or orange toad, was a symbol of the global decline of amphibians. It was discovered in 1966 by scientist J. Savage. This toad was found exclusively in the high-altitude cloud forests of Monteverde. But the last confirmed sighting of a golden toad occurred on May 15, 1989.
A severe drought that lasted from 1987 to 1988 was the first cause scientists suggested.
The golden toad story makes us wonder once again, are we paying attention before it's too late? Number 10. Bubal hartebeest. The Bubal hartebeest, an iconic antelope with a sandy coat and U-shaped horns, that graced the lands of North Africa. The Bubal hartebeest's territory stretched from Morocco to Egypt and even reached the southern Levant. But life wasn't always a safari. Their story took a dark turn. As the world changed, so did their world. Hunting and habitat loss hit them hard, and they went extinct in 1925.
Especially after the French conquest of Algeria, when entire herds were massacred at once by the colonial military.
Can you believe that the last Bubal hartebeest lived in a zoo, and now all we have left are a few museum specimens? So, the next time you visit a museum, make sure to see the Bubal hartebeest, a legend of the past. Number 11. Tecopa pupfish. The Tecopa pupfish was a tiny fish with a big story. Found in the hot springs of the Mojave Desert, this little guy could survive in water that would be way too hot for most creatures, up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. In the 1950s and 60s, people began modifying the Tecopa hot springs to build bathhouses and make the area more popular. Sounds harmless, right? Well, not for the pupfish. These changes messed up the natural flow of the springs, and the water became too warm for the fish to survive. The last Tecopa pupfish was seen in 1970, and by 1981, it was officially declared extinct. Well, once a species goes extinct, only regret remains, because once they're gone, there's no bringing them back. Number 12. Japanese sea lion. The Japanese sea lion was a type of sea lion that lived in the waters around Japan, Korea, and nearby areas. For a long time, people thought it was a type of the California sea lion, but in 2003, scientists figured out it was a separate species. What a discovery, right? Unfortunately, heavy hunting in the early 1900s led to their downfall. However, there have been some reports of sea lions being spotted in Japan since then. Could these be the Japanese sea lions making a comeback, or are they just another species? The last potential sighting was in 2016, but it's still a mystery. What do you think? Could they still be out there? Number 13. Alaotra grebe. The Alaotra grebe, this little bird, made its home in the lake's reed beds and papyrus plants, but it couldn't fly far due to its small wings. Its main food source? Fish. But then came the trouble. Carnivorous fish were introduced to the lake, and that's when the grebe's world started falling apart. Habitat destruction, fishing nets, everything worked against it. Unlike some species that make shocking comebacks, the Alaotra grebe was never seen again. The last time anyone saw them was in 1985, and by 2010, it was officially declared extinct. Number 14. Crescent nail-tail wallaby. The crescent nail-tail wallaby was a small species that lived in shrublands and woodlands of southwestern and central Australia. It mainly grazed on grass and used to be super common in Western Australia until it mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century. Can you guess where it held on a little longer? Yes, the central deserts, until at least the 1950s. This little wallaby had soft, silky fur, mostly ashy gray, with a hint of reddish tones. You won't believe that people used to compare it to a hare or rabbit, not just because of how it looked and acted, but even for how it tasted. Weird, huh? Now, should I tell you another cute story about them? These little guys were incredibly shy. If startled during the day, they'd run to hide in a hollow log. Imagine them awkwardly holding their short forelimbs close to their chest as they ran. Sounds cute, right? But well, humans still didn't leave them alone. Number 15. Barbary lion. The Barbary lion was so fierce that it lived in the mountains and deserts of North Africa. But as guns became more common and people started getting rewards for hunting lions, these creatures were wiped out.
Sometimes called North African lions or Atlas lions, the Barbary lion is one of two extinct subgroups of extant African lions.
Some small groups of Barbary lions might have survived in Algeria until the early 1960s and in Morocco until the mid-1960s, but today they're considered extinct. in the wild. Now, up until 2017, everyone thought the Barbary lion was its own separate subspecies. But when scientists took a closer look at their bones and genes, they realized the Barbary lion isn't all that different from the Asiatic lion. Number 16. The Tarpan. The Tarpan, a wild horse grazing across the vast Eurasian steppe in the 1700s. But were these horses truly wild? Or maybe they were domestic horses that broke free? Or possibly a mix of both? The mystery remains. The last known Tarpan died in captivity in Russia back in 1909. So, what happened next? In the 1930s, people wanted to bring back this wild-looking horse. By selectively breeding horses, they did eventually manage to bring horses that were similar to Tarpan in appearance. This was called breeding back. The result? Breeds like the Heck horse, Strubal's horse, and a version of the Koenig breed, all sporting that signature grayish-brown coat. Number 17. Bali tiger. Did you know scientists used to think that Bali tiger was a unique subspecies? They even gave it the fancy name Panthera tigris balica. But by 2008, it was officially declared extinct by the IUCN. Fast forward to 2017, and experts grouped the Bali tiger with the Sumatran tiger. Yes, that's right, the one that still exists today. What happened to them? They were hunted relentlessly.
Some hunters traveling from the neighboring island of Java. Reportedly, during a single day, more than one tiger was killed.
And their forest homes were turned into farmland. In Bali, these tigers were known as Harimau Bali or Samong. Pretty cool names, right? Number 18. Hawaiian crow. The Hawaiian crow, or alala, is a bird that used to roam wild in Hawaii, but is now extinct in the wild. Luckily, there are efforts underway to bring it back. This crow is about the same size as a carrion crow, but has rounded wings and a thicker bill. Its feathers are soft and brownish black, and it sports long, bristly feathers around its throat, with black feet, legs, and bill. In the wild, it could live up to 18 years, but in confinement, it could reach an impressive 28 years. Some native Hawaiians even consider this crow a family spirit or god. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? So, what caused its decline? Experts think it might be due to new diseases, predators, and the loss of its natural habitat. But let's hope this crow's story gets a happy ending after all. What do you think? Number 19. South China tiger. A tiger so rare that it hasn't been seen in the wild for decades. That's the South China tiger. This tiger was once found in Fujian, Guangdong, Hunan, and Jiangxi provinces, but it's now listed as critically endangered. That's a serious label, meaning it's at extreme risk of disappearing forever.
Million years they've roamed this world, giving way to new subspecies of tigers.
In fact, the last confirmed sighting of a South China tiger in the wild was back in the late 1980s. Could it already be extinct in the wild? The future isn't looking too good. With low numbers of prey, massive habitat loss, and other environmental issues, the South China tiger's chances of survival are rapidly declining. So, do you think we can still save this incredible species? Let's keep our hopes high. Number 20. Caspian tiger. The Caspian tiger. This beast lived across eastern Turkey, northern Iran, Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, and around the Caspian Sea, extending all the way to Central Asia, and even northern Afghanistan and Xinjiang in China. In an interesting twist, the Caspian tiger and the Siberian tiger used to share the same territory until the early 1800s.
Once this massive tiger roamed in Central Asia, especially around Caspian Sea, from which it got its name.
Some of these tigers were a mix in size between the larger Siberian and the Bengal tigers. They were also known by several cool names: They were the Balkhash tiger, Hyrcanian tiger, Turanian tiger, and Mazandaran tiger. Cool names and epic tales. What a story. Number 21. Guam kingfisher. The Guam kingfisher was a vibrant and colorful bird from Guam. In the Chamorro language, it's called sihek. Did you know it was thought there were different kinds of this kingfisher, but now it's all considered one single species. This kingfisher was medium-sized, about 20 to 24 centimeters long. It had bright blue feathers on its back and a rusty cinnamon-colored head. So, what was this kingfisher like in its natural habitat? They preferred to stay hidden, nesting in soft trees. They lived in family groups and were very protective of their territory. The Guam kingfisher hasn't been spotted in the wild since 1986. The main culprit? The brown tree snake, which was introduced to Guam and preyed on these birds. If only we could return back in time and save the Guam kingfisher. Number 22. Schomburgk's deer. Meet Schomburgk's deer, a unique species that was only found in central Thailand. First described in 1863 by Edward Blyth, this deer was named in honor of Sir Robert H. Schomburgk, who was the British consul in Bangkok in the late 1800s. Despite its fascinating history, Schomburgk's deer vanished from the wild. By 1938, the last records of this majestic creature had been documented, and it's believed to have disappeared by then. What made Schomburgk's deer so special? Why did it go extinct? The answers are lost in history, but its legacy lives on in the records. Number 23. Ivory-billed woodpecker. The ivory-billed woodpecker, a bird that might just be a ghost of the past. This woodpecker once thrived in the lush forests of the southern US and Cuba, but it's now at the center of an extinction debate. In September 2021, the US Fish and Wildlife Service put out a bold statement suggesting that this bird could be gone for good. So what made this bird so special? It fed on other plants, using its impressive bill to peel back tree bark. This woodpecker was a giant in its world, measuring up to 21 inches long with a wingspan of 30 inches. Adults had a striking ivory-colored bill, while the younger ones had a chalky white one. Now, here's where things get interesting. There have been recent reports and audio recordings hinting that this bird might still be hanging on in parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Florida. What do you think? Is there a chance the ivory-billed woodpecker is still out there, or is it a lost legend? Number 24. Po'uli. This bird was a true gem of Maui, Hawaii. With its striking black head, brown back, and light gray belly, it was not just any honey creeper, it was the only bird in its genus. Isn't it fascinating? The Po'uli lived in the lush, wet regions of Maui, but as time passed, its numbers started to drop fast. Can you guess why? Habitat loss and other factors became the reason for its decreasing population. Despite a lot of efforts, the Po'uli didn't make it. By 2004, only 2 of these birds were known to be alive, and after that, no one has seen any Po'uli. In 2018, experts faced a tough decision. With no sightings and a dramatic population decline, they recommended declaring the Po'uli extinct. By 2019, the decision was made, and the Po'uli was officially declared extinct. Well, that's how the Po'uli's chapter was closed forever. Number 25. Steller's sea cow. In 1741, Georg Wilhelm Steller, a naturalist on a Russian expedition, found himself shipwrecked on one of the remote Commander Islands in the Bering Sea. Guess what he discovered? He came across Steller's sea cow, a creature weighing up to 10 tons and stretching 30 feet long. This massive animal had a thick layer of blubber to stay warm in the icy North Pacific waters. But the Steller's sea cow was a gentle giant and moved slowly,
If one in the group was harpooned, the others would circle around their comrade to defend it.
which made it an easy target for hunters. Within just 27 years of its discovery, it was hunted to extinction for its meat, fat, and hide. Doesn't that make you feel a bit sad? Number 26. Javan tiger. The Javan tiger used to be found all over Java. But as people converted its habitat into farmland and built infrastructure, its living space got smaller and smaller. By 1940, it was only hanging on in some remote, forested areas. How sad, right? Despite extensive searches in the 1980s and 1990s, researchers couldn't find any evidence of the Javan tiger. Then, in 2008, the Javan tiger was officially declared extinct. What a loss. Number 27. Bramble Cay melomys. The Bramble Cay melomys, or as it's also known, the Bramble Cay mosaic-tailed rat. This tiny rodent lived on a small island called Bramble Cay, right at the northern tip of the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. The last sighting of the Bramble Cay melomys was in 2009. By 2016, both the Queensland government and the University of Queensland declared it extinct. But did you know the International Union for Conservation of Nature had already announced its extinction back in May 2015? And the Australian government officially confirmed it in February 2019. Number 28. Pallas's cormorant. The Pallas's cormorant, a massive seabird, once found around Bering Island, and possibly other spots in the Commander Islands and the nearby coast of Kamchatka in Russia. Believe it or not, this cormorant was the largest of its kind ever known. But here's something really cool. In 2018, scientists found fossils of this bird from 120,000 years ago in Japan. What does that tell us? It used to live in a much bigger area than we thought. How wild is that? Number 29. Lord Howe Island stick insect. Ever heard of an insect so rare it's practically a living legend? Meet the Lord Howe Island stick insect, or as it's famously known, the tree lobster. This massive stick insect lived on Lord Howe Island, but is now known to be the only species in its group.
After this discovery, it was eventually decided exactly 4 bugs, no more, no less, would be retrieved in hopes of breeding them.
Dryococcus. Can you believe people thought this insect was extinct by 1920? But it was rediscovered in 2001. How amazing is that? Unfortunately, it's no longer found in its original home, Lord Howe Island. Instead, the only place you can find these insects now is on a tiny islet called Ball's Pyramid. And get this, it's been called the rarest insect in the world because there are only 24 of them left. Talk about a real-life comeback. Number 30. Great auk, a bird so large it could tower over a human, yet so helpless on land that it was easily captured. Yes, this was the great auk. The bird used to live in the North Atlantic. These birds bred on remote, rocky islands where they had easy access to the ocean and plenty of food. The great auk was quite big, standing about 30 inches tall and weighing around 11 pounds. So when did they go extinct? By the mid-16th century, their numbers were seriously declining, and despite some early environmental protections, they continued to be hunted. The last 2 confirmed great auks were killed on June 3, 1844, on an island off Iceland. After that, reports of sightings were unconfirmed. One of the last possible sightings was in 1852. From towering over us to vanishing forever, what a tragic end for the great auk. And that was it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. What do you think we can do to prevent more species from going extinct? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, Don't forget to hit the bell icon to get all our videos on time. Until next time.